have a friend named David Haynes, who's a professional visual artist. He lives and works primarily in Berlin, Germany, but he travels extensively around the world and draws inspiration from everywhere in the wider world, and it's expressed through his art. And David's also a very talented astrologer and tarot reader. This adds another dimension to the way he sees the world and expresses himself through his art. And I couldn't think of a better person to explore the upcoming ingress of Venus into Taurus with than my friend David. So welcome, David.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm very excited. I've been looking forward to this and telling all my friends about it, and they're like a bit like, what? You're going on an astrology YouTube? And I'm like, yes, I'm going on an astrology YouTube to talk about art and astrology. I think it's really cool. I'm excited.
You've really changed a lot throughout your time as an artist. Do you want to tell me anything about that or share anything about that?
In that decade since art college, my work has transformed really from like a sculptural, conceptual, minimal practice to, I would say, more of like a traditional painterly methodological practice. And now I'm doing like landscape painting. So it's kind of, it's been quite a transformation.
Yeah, I've been watching your evolution as an artist as well in the last several years that we've known each other. I remember when you did transition, you were starting to do the charcoal drawings and do the still life with charcoal. So you were going from that kind of black and white, and now you're like living in Technicolor.
You know, the world's constantly teaching us. We're constantly surrounding ourselves with teachers, and everything in our lives is teaching us. So arguably we're never really like self-taught or whatever, but yeah, I didn't like get any like academic training in painting, and it's the same with astrology. Like before I met you in Adam's class, you know, I was really teaching myself. And at some point, just like now kind of with art, I realized like I could stay on the back roads, but at some point I want to go on the freeway of knowledge. So I joined the course. And it's interesting because we're going to talk about Leonardo da Vinci, and he also was someone who didn't do well in school, actually. That's a fascinating thing about, you know, he's supposed to be this genius innovator, didn't do well in school. And so it's really interesting that when you're a kid, these kinds of neurodiversities are ridiculed or like we try to fix them, whatever that means. And yeah, some of the most innovative and creative, groundbreaking people, and including yourself, are people that like maybe break the chains on that from time to time.
I'm going to share a piece of art that David has created recently, and it's my interpretation through his work of what I think a Venus and Taurus feeling is. What I like about this one, and what I feel is very Venus and Taurus about this, is the texture. I can almost touch, and that's very Taurus. It's very tactile. It's more of an integration of all the senses. So I like that you're adding the dimension in this painting. Can you tell me about this painting a little bit?
It's an oil painting. It's oil on a panel. I do a lot of still life. It's kind of like a method, kind of like back to basics. Paint itself, especially oil paint, feels very alive. And this one, I was actually focusing a lot on like the light, especially the ambiance of the light. So you can kind of see that with the textures of the petals and how they're really like kind of crumpled, and the flowers were actually wilting. So it's in a way I'm kind of like engaging with this feeling of looking and listening to these flowers on this table I have in my studio in the corner. It was as the day was coming to an end.
Yeah, I really love that. It's like you're looking at an item and then you're digesting it almost into your mind, and then you're expressing it out through your hands. You are the flowers because they've come through you, they've been filtered through you, you know, and the flowers become humanity through your hand, through your expression with them. And I feel like when you paint and when you do astrology, it's similar. This is a symbolic moment of this painting, and it's come through you. It was something else. Now it's immortalized here, and it's something that I can interpret as, you know, Venus and Taurus.
I see painting as a form of prayer. And there's this thing that happens between what you're looking at, the thing itself, the thing that's separated from our interpretation of it, but then our interpretation that comes through our eyes, comes into our heart, into our hands. So there's this crazy cyclical thing that happens it's quite magical, actually.
Yeah, because even that you said that these were wilting flowers too, so it's like a life cycle as well. The Taurus and Scorpio dualism is the life and death. And so it's like that in-between moment between being alive and fresh. And it's sort of incorporating both moments of being alive and new, but also that time is finite and something has to die in order for something new to come.
Love it.
I love it too. Taurus is earthy in the popular meaning of the word. It enjoys the physical world. It sees the physical universe as neither an arena in which to perform nor as a tool. Rather, it wants to be part of, involved in, and especially to experience the wonder of the physical world. That's so beautiful. Like that just feels exactly what you're doing in your work, where you're going out into the physical world. It's not performative because you're experiencing it, something that's very unique, and then you're expressing something out, which is a wonder. It's like, wow, this world is beautiful. And what do you think about that?
In many ways, what I was doing before, this really like strongly critical art, it was really coming from a place, in my opinion, and not to make this overly dramatic or anything, but it came from a more resentment, I would say, like a motivation of resentment on some level, that I was frustrated with myself, with the world, with my past, with the future. And I just wanted that to change. I wanted to stop something that saved my life, which is art, literally and figuratively. I wanted to be a part of my life, and to be more about a motivation of love, I suppose, like in the most cringe cliche way, I guess. But I really wanted that. I wanted it to be an expression of living, and my experience of living, and living in a world that is changing, as that text said. I love nature because nature is just full of things that we look at and we feel very like connected to it in a beautiful, harmonious manner, but it doesn't, like, there's so much chaos and craziness and also symmetry that happens within it. Like it's both, it's non-dual, so it's both chaotic and orderly at the same time, and that's something that I really wanted to get out and engage with more. And so I'm very much a believer in like back to basics. So I was like, okay, well, how do I do that? I just sit down, and for 1 year I drew apples, and then I'm like, okay, now I'm gonna go outside and start drawing plants, and then I'm gonna go into the mountains, and then I'm gonna, it's like I just wanted to fall in love in a way with.
That's just so Taurus too. I mean, that you sitting there and drawing just apples. I mean, that you have to be persistent. You have to have patience. You have to be steadfast, and not be rushed. You have to keep going, and that's very Taurus too. Like not stop, keep going until you reach this point where you've integrated yourself.
When I was born, Venus in my chart is in this co-presence with the sun, and the sun in my chart is quite dominant. So, and I know you've read my chart before. So the sun is like absorbing, because it's really like cooking up Mars and Venus in my chart, and the sun like absorbs it and shoots out sun things, Leo solar things. As soon as I really started to engage with my chart and see that, these things were taking place, that was one way I interpreted the meaning of those placements, is that like Venus is this very creative thing. As you say, it has a lot to do with steadfastness and classic beauty, classic senses of beauty. Planet Venus is representative of both innovative and classic and sensual beauties and things like that. And so I saw like my sun was absorbing those and shining those forward. It's interesting because my art is very colorful, but there is a life lived in the work. I hope there's like a showing of a life lived.
Your big picture of art, how that has changed too. This is spectrum of how different it was. But I love that that's on both sides of what you are. Like you're both of those things. And that's the dualism, or the Ouroboros too. Like we are the dark, we are the light, we are the Taurus, we are the, we have everything in us.
For me, it's like, okay, so the story of my life has something to do with this entanglement of the other. So in many ways, I see the purpose of my life about giving. So that's something that's very like tied in with why the story of my life has changed, or why I've chosen to participate more, I don't know, in the fate of my life, so to speak. And so for me, painting is a way I can give.
The second quote we have from Robert Hand is about Venus, so we can blend these two. It says that Venus signifies beauty and creation. Beauty arises when a set of relationships between different entities allows them to express themselves more completely, to be more perfectly themselves.
I was just reading some text the other day. I've never read it before in my life. I'm actually just interacting with a lot of antiquity philosophies. I'm interacting with a lot of Eastern philosophies too. That's part of why I chose Adam as our teacher too, because I could identify with his spiritual perspective on things. I guess as an astrologer, I fit in within that camp of like stoic, but also hermetic, symbolic, and between the camp of like non-fatalist, fatalist. So I do believe that on some levels, like we're here for a reason. Like I really believe that.
I believe in fate and free will as both, because if you think about, you have boundaries, or you have certain things that you can't control, and then within those things that you can't control, you have control. So it's like a fish. A fish is not going to be an eagle, and an eagle is not going to be a fish. But if you're a fish, you can swim anywhere that is available to you. And if you're an eagle, you can fly anywhere that's available to you. And the more charts you read, the more people you interact with, the more life you live. You just like,
There's something going on beyond my understanding. And I love that, because one thing I'm really trying to cultivate as I get older is like curiosity, beginner's mind. Because I don't know everything, and I'm really grateful for that, because it keeps life interesting, keeps me connected to the here and now, and that helps me to stay happy, I think.
I love it. All right. Okay, so let's go back to our thing here. Anytime Venus ingresses into Taurus, here are some of your key points.
Taurus is Venus's earthy feminine sign. So there's something about that groundedness, and also the receptiveness of Venus in that sign. Like, it's even more of a place of like being engaged with the world. So it's a significant energy shift whenever Venus moves into any sign, but particularly when it moves into one of its domicile signs, Taurus. Things get really grounded, sensual. What does it mean to be happy? What does happiness mean in some levels? We are beings that are here in the material world, so we can't just like turn a switch and turn that off. Like, sure, we're all connected. Sure, we have a spirit, soul, or whatever. Sure, everything is everything, or Buddha nature, or whatever you want to call it. But at the end of the day, like, I cannot eat for you. I can't go to sleep for you. So there's something about existing in a body that's here in the material world that has meaning and value. And when Venus, I think, goes into earthy feminine sign, it really brings value to that.
It's like, okay, now we have to kind of get down into the body, right? Into what do we feel? What do we smell? What do we hear? What do we experiencing in this physical realm?
Like, not just what does this mean in my fantasy, but what does this mean here in front of, like, here in my hands, here in my bone, in my flesh.
So what else do you have here? I see bring power and fertility back into whatever Taurus part of life we have in our charts.
Right.
Tell me about that.
So Venus is this bonding planet, right? So when we bring fertility and we bring that like earth heaviness, the weight of things, there's some sort of like tactility and power that we can bring back into that part of our life.
So, and this is the next one, enjoy the movements you're making towards ideals in life.
Venus is about enjoyment. So it's like enjoy how things in that part of your life are going towards something that's trying to form a worldly like castle or ideal or whatever, like a final vision of some kind.
And then we have be willing to do something just because it's something to do, not because it has to be meaningful. I like that.
Doing for doing's sake.
And then life on life's terms. What do you mean by that?
Living with acceptance, I think. If we think about Venus and Taurus as being in its more receptive listening or being sign, being present and being in life. And sometimes life isn't necessarily the way we want it to go. Things are different than we anticipated. We can still accept that things are harmonious beyond our understanding, and that life is greater than the way that it's presenting itself here and now. We're exactly where we're supposed to be. It might be beyond our understanding, but we can do this.
Finally, we're getting to this point where we can talk about Da Vinci. We've been
Okay, now we're on the Da Vinci Code.
Now we're on the Da Vinci Code. Yeah, so Leonardo da Vinci, it was hard to find some artists with Venus.
Yeah.
It's interesting because he's got the 11th house Libra, which would also be ruled by Venus. Okay, so what do you have to say about Da Vinci, David?
I got a little bit nerdy and took a lot of notes on him. So he's a Renaissance painter and he was a polymath. And he was part of the Florentine humanist movement. He was an illegitimate child, so he had no real last name. He was born with what we would call misfortune, sun in the 6th house. It turned out to be a fortunate circumstance for him because it gave him freedom. He's got these Taurus placements, Venus and Taurus. It's like, oh, obviously he's creative or whatever. But he actually didn't make that many paintings in his life. Like, he lived during the Renaissance. He lived to be 67, which is a very long time for somebody in the 15th century. Mm-hmm. But he only made maybe like fewer than 20 paintings, actually. Yeah. And he's very famous for this mirror writing thing, and he did all kinds of notes, which people know about because he really pioneered a lot of anatomical studies. He only made a few paintings, and he became really well known actually for never finishing paintings. So 6th house, toil, labor, never coming to completion. I feel like this is like a story in his life, but because Venus is there, it's somehow mitigated. And like, he's a night chart, so Venus is the one that's kind of giving him the most benefit or fortune on something.
And then if you look up to the MC being in Virgo, that's perfectionism. And I know he painted over the Mona Lisa multiple times. Like he carried it around with him. He's expressing very Virgo, like he's perfectionist. Whatever he did complete, it's considered quite perfect, right? The things that he was actually interacting with and expressing and digesting was real life, was a hand or was a body, the way that the sky looks in the horizon or the colors on the mountains.
So there's something really interesting about Da Vinci is that he was pioneering a lot of techniques too. And in painting, we know with the Mona Lisa, yes, he spent the remainder of his life working on this painting, maybe like 14 years working on the painting. So this is where it gets interesting, placed with this exalted Saturn in the 11th. He had a friend who was maybe a lover, also a subject of his paintings, named Salai. His nickname for him was the Little Devil, and the Saturn's always associated with the devil and some of those. Yes. It's like this exalted friend, Little Devil, who was stealing from him all the time, driving him crazy, but he just kept him around because he was like helping him all the time. It's like super funny. Sally sold the painting to the King of France. So the painting got sold to France. Nobody really saw it until the Revolution, and then went into the Louvre, and then people kind of saw it, but nobody really paid attention to this painting. And it wasn't until 1911 the painting was stolen. Picasso was even accused of stealing it.
Oh,
became
really?
It became this big uproar. They were saying greatest painter that ever lived, painting stolen from the Louvre, da 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 da. And apparently it was stolen by an Italian patriot who was trying to bring it back to Italy.
Oh, those Italians.
Yeah, and now 80% of visitors go to the Louvre just for this painting. I was looking at the chart in 1911, and I wonder if I could share.
Yes, please.
The chart. Okay, so Uranus is transiting through Capricorn. Things he owned were suddenly disrupted and going off the charts or whatever. And Capricorn has this nationalism association that people always put into it. So there's something kind of going on there. Saturn here in the 6th house, his Taurus going over Sun or Venus at the time. And so it's all associated with his story, with his legacy, with his art, with his work, with his toiling, and the misfortunes associated with that. So that would be fun to just look at that quickly.
So now you're going to be going into a residency and some art shows in Italy.
Yeah, so I'm currently in Berlin. I'm just painting, but I leave for Milan next Saturday. I have some paintings in a fair, a new art fair there. called Unfair Milano, and I'm with a project space out of Italy called Emerge Project Space in the booth PS5, I think. If anyone's in Milan, come say hi. And then after that, I go down to Pescara, which is like on the Adriatic coast of Italy. So I'm doing a solo residency and exhibition there with the Emerge Project Space. And then that happens on the 19th of March. And then I go to Florence, and I'm in Florence for a couple weeks, floating around doing research that's thankfully funded. And I've also never been to Florence before, so I'm very excited. Yeah, I'm very excited.
Gosh.
After that, I go to the Villa Elena Foundation, which is a artist residency in an old Tuscan villa in the Tuscan hills, close to Pisa. Is also in a hotel called the Villa Elena Hotel, and so it's a place that fosters multiple multidisciplinary dialogue. So I'm going to be there with designers and other curators, artists, poets, maybe cooks, different kinds of people. They hope to generate new creative outlooks, unparalleled research, and exciting new impulses. So very Venus and Taurus with Uranus. So something going on there.
Just looking at the website and like, my gosh.
The artists are also invited to help with the garden and stuff, which I love gardening, which kind of brings me back to my exhibition. And the working title of the exhibition is Garden of Karma, intimate exhibition of small works on paper and some oil painting, smaller works, not larger works, I think. And it'll also be the first time I'm introducing some of these philosophical ideas I have into my work. Over the course of this lifetime, your fate will blossom and also decay in different cycles, waxing and waning cycles.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of, and then I'm using because I'm going to be showing mostly paintings of gardens and plants and things like this, like flora subjects. These are like a metaphor or like an analogy or an allegory to that concept.
I love it. I'm so excited. So where can people find you to follow this beautiful adventure that you're going on?
I do have a website, but it is definitely under construction. So I would recommend checking me out on Instagram. I'm at davidhaines.info. This is my profile, and you can see different paintings and drawings and works on paper I've done. Hit me follow. Hit me a message if you're in Italy. I'd love to meet you, and I'm always open to meeting new people.
David, thank you so much for talking with me. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you, Lindsay, for bringing me on. This was really such a fun experience. I've wanted to kind of find more ways to build bridges between these two interests of mine, and I'm really grateful that you have given me this opportunity to have a little bit of fun in doing that. Yeah, and also for being my astrologer. I really am really grateful for that. Yeah.
We have to do this again soon.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you.
Thank you back.